right. Hello, everybody, and welcome. I'm just going to share my screen here so I can get my presentation up and running. We'll do that. Are you seeing the right view, my cover slide?
Yes, we are.
Perfect, perfect. Okay, so it's lovely to be back with all of you here at ILAC. My name is Brandy, and I'm here today to do a presentation about the speaking section of the CELPIP test with a very special focus on time management. If you were able to attend the previous 3 sessions we've done, we have currently worked our way through the entire CELPIP test, starting with listening, then reading, and then writing. Today is the 4th and final webinar in this particular series as we do talk about time management. So I thought what I'd like to do first is I'm going to invite all of you to ask questions in the chat box if you've got any as we go through this session. So I do keep an eye in the Zoom chat box and I can quickly answer questions as they arise if you have them in the moment. If not, I can certainly ask or answer more questions at the end. So feel free to ask whenever you can. And as Christina says, we'll keep our microphones muted. And I sort of smile to myself because you will be doing some speaking practice today if you choose to participate. So I think you'll want to make extra sure that your microphone is muted so none of us here in the Zoom audience will hear your practice. So I advise you on that. I'm going to start off by introducing to you what the CELPIP speaking test is all about. Really quick introduction, and then we'll get right into some time management tips, and we'll look at some practice test questions and so on. So it does take about 15 minutes to complete your entire speaking test. It actually goes by very quickly, and it is the final part of the entire CELPIP test. You will have 8 different speaking tasks or questions that you will complete. And for each of these tasks, you're going to have just a little bit of time to prepare first before you start to speak. And I say little bit of time because for the most part, you'll have 30 seconds in which you'll read the question on the screen and start thinking about your main ideas that you're going to incorporate into the answer in a moment. And then when you're prompted to actually speak aloud to deliver that response, for the most part, you're going to be speaking for 60 seconds. Well, full minute. There are 2 tasks that are just a little longer where you get a 60-second prep time and a 90-second delivery. But for the most part, it'll be 30 seconds to think, 60 seconds to record. And when you're actually in the CELPIP testing room, by the way, you can imagine yourself sitting in front of your computer workstation, and there will be other test takers in the room, same time as you. But you're all going to be wearing a headset throughout the entire CELPIP test. There is a microphone that's attached to the headset. And when it comes time to speak, you're going to hear a recorded voice through that headset say to you, start speaking now, at which point that microphone will turn on and you're simply going to speak out loud all by yourself in front of your computer. But whatever you say out loud is recorded by that mic. And the recordings you make for all 8 speaking tasks are going to be sent out to the rating team later on. So the team is a group of human raters who are highly proficient both in English and in the CELPIP test. They're going to listen to your 8 recordings. They will give you a score on each different task that you've delivered. And then the overall score is determined by the average. So that's a little bit of insight into scoring procedures. As far as preparing, when you're studying at home, and we're going to do all of these tasks together in session today, so you'll have some guided practice with me. This might sound like common sense as our first time management tip, but I can't stress enough how important it is to develop our ability to skim read very quickly on any language test, whether it's CELPIP or otherwise. The faster you can read the test instructions on your computer screen, the more time you're going to have to think about ideas that you're going to include in the responses later on. And part of your speaking score for CELPIP is going to be based on how interesting and well-developed your ideas are that you include in those answers. So we certainly want to maximize the ability to think and read very, very quickly. When we skim read, by the way, the eyes are going to move quickly over the lines of print on the computer screen. And you're really only looking for key points. It is not necessary to read every single word. You wouldn't want to take the time to read every word slowly and carefully. So look just for the key points in the test questions. The questions themselves are pretty short, but of course, the first thing we must be aware of is who are we supposed to be speaking to follow the instructions carefully to make sure that we can score well under task fulfillment. we need to figure out if there's a name in the test instructions telling us to speak to that person, note that name, and you'll begin your response that way. Also, we need to understand the objective. So the test instructions for each speaking task are going to be based on, it depends on the task you're working on. So your first task, you're always going to be giving advice to somebody. So recognizing that as you come into CELPIP will allow you to focus in on exactly what topic the test instruction is asking you to give advice on. Task 2 is telling a personal story. In certain tasks, like number 7, you'll be formulating an opinion and supporting it. So again, look for these keywords, understand exactly what you need to speak about, and then we'll use the rest of that prep time to think of ideas. So let's sort of get underway with some of these tips here as we apply them to an actual CELPIP test question. We'll start with speaking task 1. We will not have time today in session to cover all 8 speaking tasks, but I picked out 3 that I thought we could get into and practice some prep strategies and also practice some time management for the speaking component. So we'll start with task 1, which is giving advice. All right, here's a sample question, and this is taken from all these questions I'm sharing with you, by the way, are taken from a real CELPIP test, but from a past test. All of these questions have been retired, meaning you'll never see them again on a future test. But because they were once real CELPIP test questions, it gives us all a great opportunity to have some authentic practice with these skills. So the moment you begin any of the 8 speaking tasks, the first thing I would encourage you to look at is here. Definitely note how many seconds you'll have for prep. In this case, it's 30, as you can see. And the recording time for task 1 is 90 seconds. So we will want to think of a few more details to fill that talking time eventually. Okay, so even though we would have 30 seconds to read and think, what I'm going to do right now is encourage you all to practice skim reading quickly at home so you can read your questions in about 10 seconds. The math works like this. If we can read this in 10 seconds, we're going to have about 20 seconds of that prep time left in order to start thinking. So I'm going to keep an eye on my timer here at home casually. I'm going to count you in. I'm going to give you 10 seconds, and I'd like to see if you can read through this question and fully understand what it's asking you to give advice for. Okay, no need to write in the Zoom chat, just sort of note it up here, and we'll continue to develop our response together. So ready? Your 10 seconds starts in 3, 2, 1. Begin reading, please. Okay, that was 10 seconds. Some of us here today maybe were able to skim read that quickly, maybe not so much for others. And again, at home, as you're practicing, it's really advantageous to practice reading faster and faster. Let your eyes skim over the page looking for these particular words. So the first thing that I'm hoping you noticed, and this is what we skim for, is the who. So in this case, we are talking to a friend. And you notice that the test question doesn't give us the name of that friend. It just mentions later on with that pronoun he, which I've circled for you, that it's going to be a man. So when we start our response, we'll be role playing. And the first thing we're going to do is greet our friend. That's exactly how we would start a conversation with a friend, arguably. And I don't want you to waste your precious prep time just trying to think of a man's name. That part's easy. So when you start speaking, I just want you to grab the first man's name that you can possibly think of and go from there. But we note this as we're reading. We're talking to a male friend. And of course, the crux of this entire question is all about travel. So we would have noticed there are 2 different parts to this question that we are going to give advice for. We have to advise our friend on how to save money on both transportation and accommodation. So if we took about 10 seconds to read this through and understand these key points, let's say we've now got about 20 seconds left to start planning our answer. And this is where your time management has to be a little bit strict to keep yourself focused and ready to perform once you start speaking. So you are given paper and pen right in the testing room. So on that piece of paper, I would encourage you to jot down a couple of words, sort of like note taking, to remind yourself about some of the reasons or pieces of advice in this case that you're coming up with. So for right now, for the first topic, which is all about transportation, let's not worry about time as we practice just in the moment. We'll set a timer soon and see if we can think more quickly. But for right now, can I toss it out to all of you on the call here right now? Can you think logically about how anybody, yourself, a friend in this case, might save some money on transportation as they're about to travel. So think about what transportation means. It could be airfare, it could be buses, taxis, Ubers, trains, right? It could be any of those things, even renting a bicycle to get around town. What's the very first realistic idea that comes into your mind? Perhaps it's something you've done when you've traveled or taken a trip anywhere. What have you done to save money? So, can I invite some of your ideas into the Zoom chat? Let's see if we can help each other out to build a response. On your test all by yourself, you're going to need to think of at least 2 examples for transportation and at least 2 examples for accommodation. That would give you 4 pieces of advice and you'll support each of them. That should give you a 90-second response that's well developed. I'm willing to help you with ideas, but I certainly want you to have a chance to participate and see if you can toss in some ideas into the chat. How would you save money on transportation? I'll wait just a few more seconds. If you're not able to think of any ideas, I'm happy to share what I have, but this is part of your time management and prep. You've got to be really quick. Okay. Yeah. So Julianne is suggesting an interesting take on this. Why not walk around the city when it's possible to do so? And I sort of had that in the back of my mind as well. There's no sense buying a bus fare or hailing a taxi cab to go 5 blocks up the road. That costs money. So if you're able to physically walk, why not walk? Perfect money saving tip right there. I love that. Yeah, good one. Okay, as far as transportation goes, so Rav is also suggesting as well about using public transport. Buying even a bus pass for a day is probably a lot cheaper if you know you're going to be making multiple trips than hailing an Uber or something to that effect every single time you travel. So there's 2 very logical, sort of practical life examples right there. That would likely be enough to get you thinking. If you could jot down some ideas, you can develop them further when it comes time to speak. But 2 really, really great ones. Yeah, monthly pass, Bing Yu is saying. If you know you'll be there for an extended time, sometimes having that monthly bus pass or a daily bus pass is much cheaper than buying individual tickets every single time. Okay, so as far as transportation goes, those are all the ideas I've seen so far, and then all got really great ideas. Constanza is suggesting sort of a combination package. Let's come back to that one at the end, where you're combining your transportation and accommodation together. And when you do book a package, often you save money overall. I think that would be a fantastic sort of final piece of advice. And then you go into the conclusion. Remember, the rating team is looking for you to completely address all parts of the question. So I would still handle transportation and accommodation separately with some very precise ideas on how to save money on both of those. And then I think your creative idea about bundling them would work very well there. So just to recap, I'll throw in some ideas that I thought of. Okay, I didn't see this one in the Zoom, but this is what I do. I travel a lot. So if this was my CELPIP test question, I'd be very comfortable answering. I can just think of all the things I've done over my many years of travel to save money, as I'm a budget shopper as well. So I find that sometimes the earlier you book your fare, the cheaper it is. And I'm talking, I guess, more about airfare. Airfare is the most expensive part of transportation, I think, of a lot of trips. So if you can compare fares between multiple carriers and then book early, you'll very likely get the best rate. So that would be one idea. Again, you had this one already. Walk if you can. If you can't, maybe take a bus. In brackets, I use the symbol X, which means don't do this. That's sort of a shorthand. When you're taking notes, you'll want to think of your own symbols that make sense to you. But I'm reminding myself, don't, hail a taxi or an Uber. That's just too expensive. Bus, if you have to. Walking is even cheaper, right? Because it's free if you have the physical ability to do that. And then I think you also came up with this one, buy a day or a weekly bus pass or a monthly pass, somebody suggested. You'll save money overall. Yep, good. So again, if you could think of 3, wonderful. But you do need to watch that timer. And the timer, as you can see, is going to be right in the middle of the computer screen. It will start with 30 seconds. And when the test is officially on, that timer counts backwards. So I would keep an eye, and after about 10 seconds has gone through, hopefully you've got at least 2 ideas for transportation. Finished or not, you need to get moving on to the second one, which is all about your accommodation, because you want to make sure you're handling both sides. Okay, and we'll come back to accommodation in just a second, but I wanted to just slip in a second time management tip. As you'll notice, again, I'll go back real quick. As you notice, my notes are fairly short. I'm using just a couple of words. I'm using some symbols, etc. So there's a million ways to take notes and write ideas down. We each have our own style. But whatever you do, you'll want to make sure that your notes are very short. So write down those keywords. So like bus, walk, daily pass, all of these are really short and quite quick to write down on your paper. You won't have time to write sentences, as you can see. 30 seconds is short to read the question and think of all these ideas. So using those short forms or symbols is going to help you out. Again, an X for something you can't do. If something's increasing, drawing an arrow up. If you're talking about money, draw a dollar sign. So there's lots of little tricks and tips that you'll come up with as you're practicing your note taking. What I'd like to do next, you've got some great ideas, and some of you are jumping ahead in the Zoom chat already for the accommodation part of this question. What I'd like to do right now is when I move on to the next screen, it's going to be the same test question. We're still trying to think of ideas about how to travel cheaply, but I'd like to give you a full 30 seconds, more time than you'd have on the real test, I'll argue. But I'm going to set a timer on the computer screen. You'll see it counting back from 30 seconds to 0. And I'd like to give you that chunk of time, the full 30 seconds, to think of as many ideas as you can for how to save money on accommodation. You're welcome to borrow and steal some of the great ideas that are already in Zoom, but this is your opportunity to see if you're already at the level where you can come up with at least 2 really strong and interesting ideas all on your own within this time frame. So we'll see how it goes. Okay, you can see that timer in the middle of the screen at 30 seconds. I'll count you in. So I'm going to start that timer in 3, 2, and 1. We'll see what you can come up with. 30 seconds. Okay, so that's 30 seconds. I hope you maybe were keeping an eye on that timer. Again, if you were taking time to read, think about transportation, then accommodation, you probably only have realistically about 10 or 15 seconds at the most. But I gave you 30 just as we're getting started with this time. I had seen already some of your ideas in Zoom that I had as well. Some of you are mentioning things like staying at a hostel or a budget hotel, right, which is much cheaper than staying elsewhere in a fancy hotel and so on. Patricia is wondering about group accommodation. So maybe renting an apartment with a large party is cheaper than getting each person getting a hotel room, something to that effect. My only concern there, well, I guess it would work. With Patricia's idea about group accommodation, I'm just going to draw your attention to the precise instructions in the question. You're advising your friend who wants to travel. So the question implies it's only one person who wants to travel around. If you're clever enough to introduce in that introduction and set the stage, like, hey, Kevin, I understand that you're going to be taking your in-laws and your children traveling with you this summer. That could work because technically your friend is still traveling and you're still following the instructions. But I just advise you to be very careful with the reasoning of support that you're bringing in. It has to be as close to the actual test instructions as possible. So you don't want to get too carried away with all of these group ideas, considering you're talking mainly to your one friend. So just keep that in the back of your mind, that I understand your logic and the way you're going here as well. Yeah. Bing U has a great one. I hadn't thought of that. It's all about location. Of course it is. So even if you're staying at a budget hotel, staying further out from the downtown core is likely going to be cheaper, right? If you're staying in the tourist areas, of course it'll be more expensive. That's an excellent point. I'm sorry I didn't think of that earlier. Yeah, and sometimes even just sharing a room or renting a room, knowing that another stranger is like a hostel does that. You rent your bed. There could be 16 other beds in that dorm, and you get who you get, right? Everybody's saving money. B&B. Miracle is saying, why not stay at a family or friend's house if somebody lives nearby, wherever you happen to be traveling? So this is excellent. Yeah, really great ideas. I also had thought about the hostel or the budget hotel, and then Airbnb or apartment or with friends. So I think we're all on the same wavelength, which is not surprising, really, because when we all base these pieces of advice on our own life experience, we tend to have sort of the similar ideas, which actually is our time management tip number 3. So I deliver as a CELPIP instructor, I deliver a ton of webinars on Zoom, sometimes Instagram, sometimes YouTube. And I work with test takers all over the world, frankly, who are preparing for CELPIP. And one of the biggest challenges or stresses that a lot of my own students have are they're very concerned about having such little time to think of such interesting ideas. And yes, it's hard on the spot sometimes to think when you're nervous in a testing room. But my best advice is to literally base all of your reasons of support on your own life experience. So if you're lucky and you do like to travel a lot, like it sounds like a lot of you do, and myself too, if you're lucky enough that that test question fits right into something you're really familiar with, the question, of course, will be easier for you. So when you do speak about things that have happened, whether they happened many years ago or recently, the ideas are in the foreground of your mind. And when you speak to them, it's easier to develop naturally because you're not taking time to use imagination and make details up on the spot. So always think about your own life experience first, I would suggest. I think that's easiest for time, especially. But sometimes it will happen that perhaps you've never experienced the precise situation from the test. Maybe this is a younger test taker who's frankly never traveled yet. Could be. So they might not have a lot of ideas about themselves. Like, how would I tell a friend to travel cheaply when I've not done it? That could be the case. So if that is the situation, I guess your other remaining choices to you would be either to have an imagination and make details up, which is possible. It's just a lot more challenging. Or you can maybe think of a friend or a family member who's had the similar experience. If your relatives or your best friend has just traveled, for example, you could use their ideas from what you know of their trip. And as you speak, you could just sort of pretend that those experiences happened to you. So you're still answering the question. Sometimes it's even possible to grab ideas very quickly from a movie that you've seen recently or even a book that you've read. So don't be afraid to beg and borrow and steal ideas from elsewhere. As long as you're answering the CELPIP test question and the ideas are on point and on topic, the rating team's not going to know the difference about whether these exact situations happen to you or not. So the ideas come more quickly when we know what we're talking about. Anyway, that's a little bit of a sort of warm up talking about our prep experiences with the time, mostly 30 seconds, twice 60 seconds. I'm going to show a new question. This is a speaking task 2, which is where you're talking about a personal experience. And here we're going to actually add in after, whoops, sorry, I jumped ahead. After we actually look at the prep time, we're going to add in the speaking component because that's a whole other skill set, being able to talk from beginning to end of a response with our time management to get to about a 60-second time. So I'm now going to advance to the next screen. And what you'll see is this new question that you haven't done with me yet, at least. I don't know if you've seen this question elsewhere in free practice, but I'd like you to read the question as quickly as you can. Remember, as we just practiced, looking just for keywords. So try to take about, say, 10 seconds or so to read that question through. And then you'll have the remaining 20 seconds to start jotting down some key points to answer the question. So the moment I land on that next screen, the timer is going to start automatically. You'll see 30 seconds in the middle of the computer screen, and it's going to count down. So do keep an eye. I would encourage you to write down whatever ideas come to you on a piece of paper. And after you've had a chance to think it through on your own, I'm going to share with you some ideas that are true for me, and we'll go through developing our responses together. So get ready. I'll count you in, and then I'll move to the next screen. So I'll move there now in 3, 2, 1. Your timer has started. So read quickly. Okay, that was 30 seconds. I don't know how, can we just brief? I don't know if you want to share your actual ideas you came up with. Of course, you're more than welcome. But I'm concerned more about the time. Did we all at least get through the reading part within 10 to 15 seconds? And were you able to come up with at least a scenario in mind? That's kind of the first step. Even if you don't have all the details yet in this prep time, at least if you've got that one moment in time when you relate that you can actually think about, that's what's important. So did we all come up with the situation? Give me a yes or a no in the Zoom chat. Let's see how it went. And this is not as stressful as a real test, I hope, as we're practicing with time, but of course it's not the real test. Let's see. Okay, good. We're getting some positive results here. This is nice. Yep. And some of you are sharing your situation. So this is great. Late for work, received a monetary penalty, boss might think I'm unreliable. Yeah. So it's sort of a three-step process. So Julian, you've actually got all three of those down. Good. Yeah, good. And Patricia too. Both Julian and Patricia have great ideas. Patricia's is shorter, so it's just easier to write down in that length of time. Or sorry, is it Julianne? I hope I'm saying your name right. If you can write that quickly and get that much detail on your notes, then that's great. But feel free to shorten it down as long as you know the ideas. You don't have to worry right now in prep about things like grammar and sentence structure and so on. Yeah. Yeah. And then Julianne's also giving us the conclusion. Wonderful. Okay. Hopefully you had at least a situation in mind. And even if you haven't ironed out all your details, you can certainly speak to it and make up the answer on the spot, which is part of the skill anyways. Okay, I'm going to share with you three different scenarios too that I thought of, and I'm going to demonstrate delivering an answer from start to finish using one of these situations. And after I've demonstrated that skill, I'm going to ask you to do the same at home using whatever notes that you've just made yourself as well. Good. And I see some other fantastic ideas making their way into Zoom chat. Bing Yu is saying late for language school. It was just too far to go and you ended up going to the wrong branch anyways. I assume maybe that you missed the class and the ending of that story, I'd be curious to hear. You know, did you get a refund? Were you penalized? Were you in trouble? Did the teacher understand? So again, if that's all you got down in the prep time, wonderful. You still have to add in that last detail as you speak. Yeah. Okay, so here's a situation that's true for me. Again, thinking just back to my own experiences. This one happened a very long time ago, back in, honest to goodness, the year 2000. I'm going back 25 years in time, but it jumped out at me as something that just connects to this question well. So my first trip when I was in France, I was trying to catch a train from Paris to Bordeaux, which is on the west of the country. And the time between trains was simply too short, and I missed that train. So I ended up going down to the south of France instead, to Nice, and continued my vacation there. So it sort of hits all those steps that we're looking for, basically saying what were we late for, why were we late, and then what happened. As long as we're hitting those three steps, we've answered the question fully. So that's one situation that rings true for me based on my own experience. So it was easiest. And I have to admit, and I don't mean to sound a little high on my horse here, but I have to say, honestly, I'm hardly ever late for anything. I've always been very punctual. It's a value that I hold near and dear. So I had a really hard time thinking of other true examples for me where I was late for something, apart from that one where I missed a train. So my point to sharing this with you is for the second situation, the first line of it is true. I did go to the Cyndi Lauper concert. She performed here in Vancouver in the summertime. So that part's true. So that's what made me think of it, as it was a recent event. I wasn't late for the concert though. So if I wanted to just grab onto that life event, this concert, this idea pops into my mind. To make it fit this test question, I still have to explain, well, what was I late for? Why was I late and what happened? So if I chose to talk about this, I made these details up. I could easily create a story in my head where I could say, oh, I had these tickets for a concert, but I went out to dinner first. Dinner was long, so I ended up being late to get to the arena and I missed that opening band and so on. Okay, so if again, you can think quickly, and if you've got a fairly developed vocabulary, I would say, you are more than welcome to create situations and details to sort of turn your little story into something that precisely fits the question. That's the important thing. So again, the rating team's not going to know that this isn't really true for me. They're just going to hear an answer that makes sense based on the question. So that's what you're trying to do. And this third situation I'll share with you, this didn't happen to me at all. This happened to my sister. I have a twin sister and she's late for everything. I don't know how we're related, to be very honest. Drives me crazy. But she once took out a membership at the YMCA. She signed up for a yoga class, but she ended up missing the bus to the gym. And anyway, she got there too late and the door was locked and she couldn't take the class. So that situation happened to her. If I was really stuck for ideas and couldn't think of anything, I could just grab onto that true event for her that I know about. And if I wanted to deliver the story for my own answer, I would just make it sound like these events were happening to me. Because again, the question says, talk about a time when you were late for something. So again, I can pretend this is my story, share it. Those ideas are still fairly quick to come to me because I know exactly what happened to my sister. All I have to do is, instead of saying she and my sister, I just say, I missed the bus and I was late. Okay, so grab your ideas from whatever method is easiest for you, as if it happened to you truly, as if half of it happened to you and you have to make some details up, or if an experience happened completely to somebody else or a movie character and you want to just pretend that it's yours. The rating team's not going to check. They won't know the difference. Just make sure that you do answer the question. Okay, here's where it gets extra challenging. So just thinking of ideas in a short amount of time is challenging enough with your time. And one of the best ways to do this at home, I think, is to first, if you need to take lots of time to think of ideas, great. But eventually you'll want to set your timer and see how quickly your ideas are coming to you. And once you've been able to think quickly and make suitable notes, when it comes time to practice delivering your answer from start to finish, my best advice for time management is going to divide your response, if it's a 60-second response, into what I'll refer to as time chunks, for lack of a better word. So your introduction as you begin to speak into your microphone will be one sentence, maybe two. It'll be pretty short. I'd say 7 to 8 seconds at the most. And your job as you start to speak is to give some background context, set the stage, and make it very clear about what you'll be speaking to next. It's literally your introduction, the intro statement. Oftentimes when we're telling a story, like we are in speaking task 2, all of these 5 W's come into mind. The 5 W's are the who, what, where, when, and why. So I think it's interesting. That's the whole point. It's interesting as you're telling a story to throw in details like who you were with, when this happened, maybe where it was. You know, probably the what is the basis of the question and even why you were going. So any details like this that make sense, that usually goes into the opening. Part of your score is based on not just how accurately you answer the question, but also on how well developed and supported and interesting your details are. So if you can throw in these interesting details, especially in the intro, when you're trying to grab the attention of your listener, that's really going to support your score for sure. The middle part of your answer is the most important. This is where all of your main ideas are going to be shared and any specific examples that make sense. So I would say about 45 seconds out of the 60 seconds will be spent here. And usually you'll want about 3 different points, I guess, that you're making. That seems to be that magic number that will develop into a complete response. And this particular question has 3 parts to it anyway. You know, what we relate for, why we relate, and what happened. So keeping an eye on the timer is so crucial here because we can't just spend 40 seconds talking about what was happening and not even get to why we were late. If you do that, you're not answering the question fully and it will have a negative impact. So just try to keep mindful of your time. If you can chunk it into about 15 seconds per part, if you've got about 3 parts to cover, and that's going to afford you just a few seconds left at the end. So if you've got time, it is recommended to throw in some sort of a concluding statement so that the story or the response sounds finished. So this is going to give you a very well organized response and a complete one. 2 skills that are helpful to boost your score for speaking. And again, these are all approximations. You're asked to speak usually for 60 seconds, but it doesn't have to be perfectly 60 seconds. If you came in at 54 or 55 seconds with a very full and interesting answer, that's just fine. The rating team will be more than happy with you. But it is still important to sort of devote most of the time to the middle part, which is where the details come into play, and less time, of course, in your intro and conclusion. So what I'd like us to try now, first of all, I'll explain to you what the screen looks like when you start to record. As you can see, it looks a little bit different compared to the countdown clock we saw earlier. So in the middle of the screen, right beneath the question's the same. Right beneath the question, you'll see the word recording after you've been asked to speak out loud. And you'll all of a sudden see that little blue bar on screen. And the moment it says recording, and you hear that voice in your headset say, start speaking now, that little blue bar is going to start to move from the left of the screen to the right. And it's eventually going to fill in all the white space there. It is the timer. And this is a 60-second question. So it will take about 60 seconds for the blue bar to make its way through. So as you're speaking into the mic, imagine this, again, you've got the mic there, you're speaking while you're looking at your computer screen, and this is what you see. You probably have your notes in one hand or in front of you. So as you're looking at notes and speaking, just keep an eye on that blue bar. And when it's almost at the end, you're going to know that it's time to wrap up. Okay, so I'm going to use a 1 minute timer exactly. And this is how I advise you to practice at home as well. So we can be precise with our time. But please be aware you will not see the timer in numbers for the recording on the real test. It is going to be a blue bar. Anyway, I've got my 3 situations down here. Is there one there that you'd like me to demonstrate for you? I'm going to demonstrate my example. And then, since your microphones are muted at home, I'm going to set a second timer for 1 minute and ask all of you to deliver your own answer from beginning to end. But what we're focusing on here is short intro, most of our time in the body details with support, and then a short conclusion. So which number would you like me to demonstrate for you? Doesn't matter to me. I'm happy to do any of them, but I thought it would be helpful just to hear a bit of a demo before I ask you to do this yourself. Choose a number. Patricia's saying number 2, the Cyndi Lauper concert. Okay, let's do that one then. And this will be a good challenge for me because, again, even though I went to the concert, I'm going to be making up the rest of the details since this didn't really happen in truth. So I'll do my best. Okay, so I'm going to set that 1 minute timer there to the left of the screen, and it's going to count back. So please sort of keep an eye on that and note when I'm shifting between ideas. So I'll do my best to demonstrate a response beginning to end. So here we go in 3, 2, 1. This past summer, my sister and I had tickets to see Cyndi Lauper in concert at Rogers Arena in downtown Vancouver. We were so excited to spend the evening together that we booked dinner at the Cake Steakhouse before the show so we could spend some time catching up. Now, the Cake Steakhouse was enjoyable. We loved our meals, but it was really busy that night, I think with other concert goers also in the restaurant. So service was a little bit slow. And by the time we got our bill and paid for that bill, we realized that we were not going to get to the arena on time for the beginning of the show. It was about a 30-minute walk to get to the arena, and the show time was starting in about 10 minutes. We paid our bill. We quickly walked as fast as we could to the arena. Sure enough, we missed the opening band, which was disappointing. But at the very least, we did not miss any of Cyndi Lauper, and she put on a fantastic show. Okay. So I came in at about 58 seconds, you'll notice, and that is just fine. Nothing to worry about there. I had other things I wanted to say, but again, looking at my timer, I knew I had to start wrapping it up. So this might happen to you. If you've got lots of ideas and you were hoping to get them all out, it's important to sort of hold yourself back. Make sure you get the important details and the necessary details, but you do need to stick to the script in a point to make sure you've covered all points of the question. So I think I'm just reviewing my questions on screen, talked about what we relate for, why we relate, and what happened. I think we've covered all of those details. Okay, so that's one example. That's just one way you can do it. Remember, your mics are muted. Just do a double check now so we don't have any surprises, as some of you could be shy if you're speaking aloud and we all hear what you have to say. So just make a double check that your own microphones are muted. And I'm going to clear my ideas from screen there. Whoops. Same question, but you'll notice the timer on the left. This one is for you. So I'm going to count you in. I'll count down from 3. And when I start that timer, can you please develop your own introduction, set the stage, and follow the rest of the instructions to deliver your own response. And then after you've had a chance to practice, we'll debrief. We'll see how it went in the Zoom chat. All right, are you ready? Don't be shy. We can't hear you. Just try to do your best and have some fun with this. So I'll count you down from 3, 2, 1. Start speaking now. And time is up. So I thought I would announce that in case you didn't see the timer there. Okay, so I have to ask, we get too close to 60 seconds and finish the 3 points that we were supposed to talk about. Please give me a yes or a no in the Zoom chat. We'll just sort of gauge how it went first, and then we can talk tips about how to help if it's a little tricky. And this, if you're new to this, by the way, if you're just getting used to speaking and timing yourself, this is probably quite challenging and maybe even a little intimidating or frustrating. And that's normal. That's all part of the process. But again, after you've practiced so many times speaking aloud for 1 minute with the timer, honestly, you develop the sixth sense. You have an understanding about how many details you're going to fit in. Okay, so I haven't seen anybody yet share in the Zoom chat how it went. Did we get close to 60 seconds? Close to rounding it off? Okay, Miracle says that's good. Yeah, it doesn't have to be perfect. Anything, I don't know, 52 or 54 seconds, as long as it's a complete answer and you've hit all three parts of this, then that's really all you need to worry about. Yeah. Okay, so it sounds like Julianne had more to say, right? Like you had a great structure, you're saying, but you would have liked to continue to speak. Yeah. So this is the harder of the two situations to fix. You fall into one of two camps. You're either like me and Julianne, apparently, who we have too many ideas to share and we just can't fit them all in a 60-second question. So that one's easier to fix because if you're diligent and if you're able to keep your eyes on the timer and recognize, like I've shared two main points with lots of detail. I'd like to share a third, but I've only got 6 seconds left. So in your mind, you're making a very quick decision to just omit or skip that third point and get right to your conclusion. So it involves being a little flexible and spontaneous, but it's better to offer the structure as you're commenting on there, Julianne, and finish, and you're still answering the question, than to try to give a whole new idea and get cut off mid-sentence. That's going to have a negative effect. So that's the easier of the two. Okay, Constanza is saying, you had the answer there, maybe just not exactly clear what you wanted to say. So for this, here's what I would advise in order to improve upon this. There's sort of two things at play. One of them, what we're focusing on today, is time management. But the other piece to this is honestly just taking time to think about clear ideas that answer the question and being able to develop them in full sentence structure as we speak. Because you've already seen some example notes on screen. They're really short. And that's a whole skill all by itself. It's not even really time related. It's more language-based related and speaking related. So how do I take a couple words that I wrote here on my piece of paper, and then when I speak, all of a sudden they're full sentences that are grammatically correct? And that's a piece that does take a lot of practice. So my advice to all of you for your own speaking skills would be to take one question like this one that you've just practiced. I would deliver it clearly the first time like you've just done, and then note what went well and what didn't. Take a wee break, take a wee pause, have a drink of water, come back and deliver the same answer again, exactly the same answer with the same ideas that worked well. I think the more with repetition, the more times that you deliver that same answer over and over again, the more you polish it. So if you got stuck on one idea, take a moment to think about how can I make that idea better? And the next time you deliver that answer, you're going to really work on that one little point. So it's kind of a step-by-step approach. It works for me in a lot of practice I do. I have a lot of experience too in theater and performing arts. I did that all the way through school and even while I was teaching, I've always been in community theater. So maybe these skills come easier to me with training, but they weren't easy to begin with, right? Part of learning a script is repetition and practice. And the more you repeat it, the easier and more natural it becomes. So internalize those skills as you're practicing. And I think that might help you out too. Yeah. Did anybody here just not get anywhere close? Like, did you speak to 30 seconds and then that was it? Sometimes that happens. And if you're one of the people that just has a really hard time filling the time effectively, it's the harder of the two skills to fix. But if that's your case, I would honestly recommend that you don't even worry about a timer to start with, because at that point, it's not even a time management issue. It's more about thinking of ideas quickly that makes sense. So in that case, as you study, I think it's best just to take however long it takes. If it takes you 20 minutes to think of a story that fits this question at home, then take 20 minutes or what have you. Still get your notes down so you know what ideas you're going to deliver. And then you can at least set that 1 minute speaking time and see if you can organize those into thoughts. So there's lots of little sort of tips and avenues that you can take. But it starts with you. You need to sort of assess first what's working well for me and what's not. Whatever the problem is, of course, we've got to troubleshoot it. Anyway, hopefully that was helpful to a degree to get you speaking aloud to a wee bit. Can we finish today with one more practice? This is a speaking task 3, and I thought it would be helpful to look at least one of the picture tasks on this test. So of your 8 speaking tasks, 4 of them will be picture-based. The other 4 will be text-based, as we've already done today. So here's an example question for a speaking task 3, and I'm trying to remember where I got this question from. I deliver this one in a lot of my own webinars. So if you've attended a webinar in the past, perhaps you've seen this picture. I don't remember if it's one from a free test or not, but even if you've seen this picture before, we're still going, I think it's helpful to use it as a base to workshop. So for your speaking task 3, this is another situation where we've got 30 seconds to get familiar with the instructions. And when it comes time to speak, we'll be speaking for 60 seconds. So again, we always want to look there first and note our time, what's coming up. The instructions for speaking task 3 are really easy and they're always the same. So this is good news for us. I'll read them to you now and then you'll know them forevermore moving forward. For task 3, you'll always see, describe some things that are happening in the picture below as well as you can. The person with whom you are speaking cannot see the picture. So all that means is when it comes time to speak, you've got to give enough information. I like to pretend I'm talking on the phone to somebody who literally can't see this. And if I give enough precise information with lots of detail and description, I want that person on the phone to be able to imagine in their mind what I'm looking at. So that's sort of the objective here. So what you're going to do is use your 30 seconds of prep time to do, I sort of 2 things. First things first is you need to understand the location of the picture, because when you start to speak, you're going to give what's called an overview statement. So when I look at this picture, I see what I would call a community fair or a community festival. So I would encourage you to start with that and make it the first line in your notes. And then after that, in 30 seconds of prep time, I'm hoping you can select about 3 or maybe 4 different parts of the picture that you plan to talk about next. The good news here is you will not have time to talk about everything, and you are totally in control as to which parts you want to describe. So pick and choose the people and objects wisely, using words that you're familiar with. Make it easy on yourself. And the best way I think to earn a really high score for this particular question is the more interesting your vocabulary is and the more descriptive and precise your ideas are, the better the score will be too. So I'm going to show you some sample notes that I came up with here in 30 seconds. All right, so these are sort of, I didn't actually use a lot of short forms. They're mostly just 1 word at a time. So the top line shows community fair. So as I start talking, I'm going to remind myself to begin with that intro. Now you'll want to focus mainly on these ing action verbs because you have to describe what's happening now in the present time. So we call this present continuous. So for the grammar to be correct, you're wanting all sorts of action words that end with ing. What I would advise you do in the 30 seconds of prep is to think of words that are interesting. All right. I chose one idea here first before I got to the action. I'm going to start my response by describing this woman. And as I look at the picture in my mind, I can make it up on the spot. I think she's just reaching into her purse to buy a food item and so on. So that part, I feel like I can just make that up as I speak. I don't really want to take my prep time worrying about it. But I did notice she's wearing a purse. And I thought in my head, if I could give some descriptive ideas, like it's a leather purse and it is slung across her body. So just throwing in these little touches makes the response more interesting. And that maybe isn't something I would think of on the spot as I speak. So by writing it in my notes, I'm going to remind myself to include it. It's going to help my vocabulary and my content score to be more interesting. And then after that, I'm going to talk about these 2 people I've decided. I'll pretend they're a brother and sister or siblings. You can make up the relationship. It looks like they're walking, right? You would look at this and say, okay, there's a brother and sister walking. Well, walking is accurate, but it's also sort of simple, a little bit uninteresting. So in my prep time, I thought rather than say walking, why don't I use this verb? They are strolling. And when you stroll, you're walking a little bit more leisurely. So this word is just higher level. It's more interesting than walking. So it's a good use of my prep time to write it down so I won't forget to say it when I speak. And then after these people, I'll go up to this little boy. I'm trying to kind of organize myself. And this fellow, I'm in my mind, I'm thinking he's grabbing a slushie. I noticed the pictures of the drinks. So I thought slushie would be a really interesting vocabulary word that's accurate. So I'll talk a bit about him if I have time. I might go on to this little girl. She's clearly pointing at the dog. So I could say that and I would be accurate. And just to make the response more interesting, I'm going to throw in a descriptive word. She's not just pointing, she's pointing excitedly. So when I write that down, I'm hopefully going to remember to say it aloud. Okay, so again, write down in writing on your notes the words that you want to use in the response because they're higher level. I think easy words like standing, walking, so on, you don't need to write those down as you can simply speak to them on the spot. All right, so what I'm going to do next here is can I still set a 30-second timer for prep? I'm going to leave my ideas there in case they're helpful for you. But can you take 30 seconds of your own to decide which people that you're going to talk about in this scene? Because I'm going to demonstrate my answer first, and then I'm going to set a timer and ask you to practice one more time out loud. So please pick the people that you think you'll be using in your own answer. Try to make the verb choice really interesting. So I'll set that 30-second timer in 3, 2, 1. Start thinking. Okay, 30 seconds is up. So at that point, you would hear the automated voice say, start speaking now, and ready or not, your microphone turns on. So hopefully you decided at the very least on 3 people, possibly 4 that you're going to talk about, and you've already got some interesting action words all set up. So I'm just going to replace the preparation time clock with the recording time clock. Again, remember on the real test, that blue bar is the timer. We will not see a clock counting down, but we're going to use the 1-minute counter clock right now as we practice because it will be more precise. So once again, I'll set that timer. I'll do my best to deliver my own answer following my notes just to sort of demonstrate the time management piece. And then I'll ask you to do the same and we'll wrap up for the day. All right, I'll count myself in 3, 2, 1. I'm looking at a picture of many people in the community at a food fair. There is a woman wearing a purple dress who is purchasing a rice bowl from one of the vendors. She is wearing her leather purse slung over her body crosswise. She's glancing over her shoulder at 2 siblings who are strolling through the fairgrounds. The older sister is draping her arm around the neck of her younger brother quite lovingly. Directly in front of this young brother and sister team stands a chubby little boy in a yellow shirt who is rudely grabbing his slushie out of the hands of the vendor. I think he's just too excited to drink it down. And immediately behind the young boy stands a cute little precocious girl in a blue dress who is pointing quite excitedly at a tiny puppy. Everyone's having a great day today. I almost didn't have time for my conclusion there, and I might have gotten cut off. But again, if you get cut off in the end of your sentence, like I probably would have done there, and it's obvious that you had given a full answer, you were wrapping up, it's okay. It's not going to have a tremendous impact. You do not, however, want to get cut off in the middle of an actual point of description. The concluding sentence is nice to have, but it's minor in comparison to everything else. Anyway, hopefully that gives you some idea about sort of watching your time and moving around between people in the scene. So one final practice today. Let's make this a good one, as it will be our last hurrah before we turn the mic back over to Christina. But I've cleared my notes and I've got a new fresh 1-minute timer there. And I'm going to ask you to deliver your own answer now, trying to follow that format. Remember to give your overview first, whether it's a picture of a community fair or food festival, whatever you think it is, start with that. And then just start describing your people. Make sure your verbs are ing based when you're describing them, so it's happening now. Okay, so please start speaking in 3, 2, 1.
I saw a lot of people. Maybe there are the market,
Tamazi.
but yeah.
Sorry, Tamazi, we
Also,
can hear you.
yeah,
Christina,
yeah.
can you mute your mic, Tamazi? Okay, thank you. Yeah, sorry, keep going. Here, why don't we start that again? Sorry, folks. That happens sometimes. And I didn't remind you. This one time I didn't remind you to make sure your mic was muted. My apologies. Okay. Everyone's mic is muted now. Tamazi, you sounded wonderful, by the way. You just might have surprised others who weren't sure what was happening. So take two. I'll count you down with a fresh timer in 3, 2, 1. Please start speaking. And time is up. All right. Out of curiosity, how many parts of the scene did we all have a chance to describe? There's not a rule, but I think you'd want at least 3. I'm guessing, right, to have a really full complete. But maybe quickly in the Zoom chat, can we just do a little poll in a way? So how many people did you describe? Was it 3? Was it 4? Was it 5? Let's just sort of check in and see how we're all doing. There's lots of ways you could do this. If you've got lots to say about each person, you probably will only have about 3 people described, maybe 4. I think I had about 4 myself. Yeah, okay. And Miracle saying 4. Oh, well, not well structured. I wonder what you mean. Too bad I didn't have time to hear some of your answers. I could give you some feedback. But yeah, if it's not well structured, just sometimes it's nice to come up with sort of a few descriptive ideas. Like remember that little boy in the yellow shirt? I said a young chubby little boy wearing a yellow shirt is grabbing. So if you can get in the habit of giving the descriptive detail first and then the action, maybe that will help with the structure and sort of keeping to that. But yeah, it looks like some of you 3 to 4, that's about average. I would say anywhere from 3 to 5 is probably in the right zone. If you're doing any more than 5, I'm worried that you're not giving as much description as you should be for each part. So yeah, try to keep that in the back of your mind. 3 to 5 would be fine with lots of really interesting detail, sounding like it went okay. And again, this is something you can repeat the same answer several times until you get it to the point where you're comfortable. Anyway, let us wrap up here with a summary of skills of what we talked about today. So first and foremost, yes, this is a speaking test, but the faster you can read the question, the more time you have to think. So I would encourage you to jot down some keywords on note paper like we were practicing today, but just keep your notes short so that they don't take up a lot of your time to write them down. If you can think of your own life experiences, then that's probably the easiest way to think on your feet as you talk, or you can borrow ideas from other people that you know, or even make them up as I demonstrated. Just make sure you're answering the test question. And then keep an eye on the timer when you do speak, right? If you want a sort of 7 to 8 seconds for your intro, most of your time in the middle, and try your best to squeeze in a little concluding statement, even if it's 5 seconds or so, that would be ideal. So it's sort of like a time chunk. And these are approximations, as I said. Even if you finished at 52 or 53 seconds and your answer is accurate, then that is just fine. So we are right in time. It is exactly 2 p.m. Pacific time, which makes it 5 p.m. Eastern time. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. If you do have any questions about the session, I'm happy to answer. And Christina, of course, is going to come back and do a little draw for the free week at ILAC, which would be great.
That's right. Thank you so much, Brandy. Fantastic tips, as always, very insightful. Thank you so much. We all always learn something with your sessions. So I hope everyone, practiced and took notes. So thank you again. And for those who haven't had a chance to fill out the attendance form, I also shared here in the chat the link. So again, that's for a chance to win 1 free week of CELPIP preparation classes. I see that already like 9 of you have already filled out the form. So then after I will do just a program walkthrough right now. All right, so thank you. I see all the thank yous, so Thank you guys for attending the session. So bear in mind that you need to stay until the end. So I'm going to just take 5 minutes of your time to do a program walkthrough, right, of the preparation classes that we offer at ILAC. And then at the end, we will draw the winner's name. All right, so I'm going to just go ahead and share the presentation. And so just so everyone, okay, I think right now, I think you can all see it, right? Thank you. Thank you for the thumbs up. I appreciate it, Brandy. All right. So this is how the attendance form looks like, right? So make sure that you fill out the first, last name, email, you confirm the email, your phone number, WhatsApp number, and then you select CELPIP demo lesson. All right. Why would someone consider taking some preparation classes at ILAC? Well, you saw it for yourselves, right? It's not just one demo lesson that you will learn how to pass the test or just a few demo lessons, right? But you have to put it into practice, right? So we have expert exam teachers. We offer flexible schedules, full-time, part-time, in-person, and coming soon online part-time schedule. I'll tell you more about that as well. We offer affordable prices and exclusive promotions that we will also talk about that in just one moment. In terms of the delivery methods, so we offer in-person classes as we see here in this first chart. Classes go from 6 to 9:30 p.m. Toronto time, and then 6 to 9:30 p.m. Vancouver time. We are located in both cities, Toronto and Vancouver. Okay, classes go, as I said, 6 to 9:30 p.m. from Monday through Thursday. You could choose to come on that full-time or semi-intensive schedule, or you can also choose a part-time schedule. So you would come Mondays and Wednesdays, or Tuesdays and Thursdays. As you can see here in this chart, we focus on one skill per day, right? So if you are to choose a part-time schedule. If you are doing Monday and Wednesday, you will be covering reading and writing skills. And if you choose Tuesday and Thursdays, then we focus on listening and speaking. Okay, so again, this schedule, this option is for in-person classes in both Toronto and Vancouver locations. All right, 6 to 9:30 p.m. We will resume the online CELPIP preparation classes, but more part-time. We were delivering full-time classes, but we noticed that students that were looking more for part-time schedules, so we will resume that part-time classes online in 2026. So stay tuned for all the details. Now, in terms of promotions, so we have two promotions that you could choose from, and this is applicable for, again, the in-person classes at ILAC Nat School. So as you can see down here, the regular price is $190 per week for the full-time schedule. You will come 4 days a week, Monday through Thursday. If you choose to come on a part-time schedule, twice a week, then the price is $130 per week. All right. In terms of the promotion, so you could choose between two promotions. One is getting additional weeks for free. So for every 5 weeks that you book, we will give you one additional week for free. So meaning you will pay for 5 weeks, but you will study for 6, or you will pay for 10 weeks, but you will study for 12 weeks. Okay, so this is promotion A, or then promotion B that you could choose from is getting the free test, right? So ILAC will pay the CELPIP test when you book 8 weeks full-time schedule or 12 weeks part-time schedule. Okay, and remember that the price after taxes, it comes to $333. Okay, so this is a great promotion. So you can choose between one or the other promotion, getting free weeks or getting the free test. Okay. What else we offer for you? So besides the demo lessons as today's demo lesson, we also offer free trial classes at ILAC Net School. So meaning in that 6 to 9:30 p.m. schedule, you could come and try that one class for free one day. So you could choose whether you want to come Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday. So that's available all throughout the year. On top of the promotions that we mentioned and the free trial lesson, we are also offering a referral program. So if you might not be interested in maybe our preparation classes, but you know a neighbor, a friend, a relative who might be looking for some English classes, CELPIP preparation classes, when you refer them to ILAC, you're getting also a gift card, a $100 gift card, Visa, MasterCard, when the person that you're referring registers at our courses. Okay. Where to find us? So you can find us at our locations in downtown Toronto and downtown Vancouver. You can see here our address. So very close to the subway station or the SkyTrain in Vancouver. You can, of course, email us at info@isla.com or message us on WhatsApp or, of course, call us. I'm going to just, in the next screen, you can see the QR code, right? So if you scan it, it brings you to our WhatsApp chat. So you can connect with us via WhatsApp. You can, of course, call us and you can email us at info@isla.com. Okay. Any questions about the preparation courses? I'm going to just stop sharing now. I'm going to just check here the chat. I see we have, yeah, you're welcome. Thank you everyone for your nice messages. Okay. Online option. So, Hulayan, sorry if I don't pronounce it correctly. So at the moment, we do not offer online CELPIP preparation classes. We will resume them in January next year, 2026. Okay, so make sure that you connect with us. You follow us on our social media. If you want to also send me an email here, I'm also gonna share my email, so christina@isla.com, right? So then we will be updating you guys on the new schedule for the CELPIP online programs. All right. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in tonight. Thank you, Brandy, as always, for supporting us with all your knowledge, sharing your knowledge, your insightful tips. So thank you. And I will also choose or use this time to wish everyone happy holidays. All right. I hope you have a good time with your family, beloved friends, and of course, you, Brandy. And see you in 2026.
See you next year. Thank you,
See you
everybody.
next year. Happy holidays.
Thank you
Take
so
care.
much.
Bye-bye.